Well, I want to start off with that news conference that you had just earlier this month, and there was something that stuck out to a lot of people in that news conference, and I'm going to quote you. You said, "We would not be here today without the passion and commitment from my wife, Dayle." What did she say to you that made literacy the top priority of the legislative session?
She pointed out the obvious, that we neglected our future, and that's our young people. We're in a place in literacy that she recognized, and through her insight as a former educator, and certainly her insight as we met with legislators from around the country, but especially from the South. This is a problem. Mississippi did it, Alabama did it, and it's time that we did it, and we're going to do it. So really the idea took shape, that was incubated, if you will, by Dayle and her passion for young people, for children, because of her past work. Certainly resonated with me, and knowing that we can do it. And it certainly caught on like wildfire with our members. So we're ready.
What did you say to him? What do you remember saying to him?
Mostly that for just far too long, we have depended on teachers to do this, to fix this. We sent children to school at age 5 or 6, and we just relied on the teachers to do everything. And it's too much. Our teachers have done a phenomenal job and are working hard, but you know, there's a lot more to this. There's the birth to age 5 group and the community help, and for just far too long we have overlooked this issue because it's very complicated and complex to fix, but it's very fixable. And we just had to dig in and work on it and come up with the legislation, which I think they've done a phenomenal job with. And I think you'll see that Chairman Chris Irwin has done an amazing job with the Georgia Early Literacy Act of 2026.
I'd love to know a little bit more about your background. You're a former principal, former teacher. Tell me what you taught and where.
Yes, so we live in Effingham County, and I've taught art, I've been a school counselor, but my favorite job of all was as elementary principal. And even then, I was very involved and aware of the issues surrounding literacy. And it's really a workforce development, it's our future. And we have overlooked it for so long, but when I was principal, I wrote a federal grant and got almost $1 million for our little elementary school, and it made a big difference in being able to help the teachers be able to teach their students to read in the classrooms.
Is there someone in your family that struggled to read or maybe had dyslexia or anything like that, that kind of maybe where this kind of came from, this passion?
You know, I know I'm so thankful about this. We have 5 grandchildren and 2 sons, and nobody ever had trouble reading. It's not about our family in this case. I know it often is. That's the impetus for somebody to get involved. But for us, and for me, it was the children that I saw. Here's what it is, Andy, really and truly. Every year I had a group of children who came to kindergarten, and about half of those children came to school that first day and could sit in the seat, and they were ready to learn. They had a rich vocabulary. They knew some letters, they knew some sounds, they knew some blends. They could follow directions. You know, sit in the seat, how to walk to lunch in a line. And then about half of the class, and now it's up to 60% of the class, those children come and their vocabulary is very limited. They do not have the sounds, they don't have the background, they don't know. Nobody's ever told them, sit in that seat and listen, or taught, the basics. So you have classroom teachers that are having to figure out the keys to those two diametrically opposed groups of children. And it's very difficult, but I think that we can address that group of children and help them, but it's going to take communities getting involved and helping us.
Mr. Speaker, you mentioned that this is not a problem with teachers, and you just mentioned that this is a development issue. Has this just come down to teachers were not properly teaching children the correct way to learn for decades?
No, we need to make sure we're clear on this. There are many school systems in our state who have an excellent record with teaching young people to read, very, very proficient in reading. And they're all over the state, not just in other states, and the science of reading is not anything new, but what we found is that we were not providing our teachers with the resources they needed, because many of them are certainly very, as Dayle was, with her teachers at Springfield Elementary, there were many qualified teachers there, but we knew the problem exists that the science of reading, we don't have a consistent process of educating our teachers when they come through our university system, and those are some of the things we discovered that are very fixable. And I congratulate and thank the chancellor and the presidents of our universities and the deans of the schools of education. We're all on the same page now. When our teachers come out, they'll be ready to teach. And that's what's important for our young people. I want to go back and address this. Dayle said she did not know. I knew people growing up. I'm some of the best workers that ever walked on shoe leather that were not able to read, and how disadvantaged they were when it came to the workplace, as simple as reading a road sign. We've had truck drivers that you would, the first trip they made, you had to go with them for a local, if they were going to a different place because they could not read road signs and directional signs. And so those were the type of disadvantages. I've been years ago, been in the voting booth, legally of course, with an individual who could not read. Now that tugs at your heartstrings. And we can make a difference here, and we're going to make a difference when it comes to ensuring that our young people can read, because it's about their quality of life.
One of the things that we reported previously is that there's this organization called the National Council on Teacher Quality. And 2 years ago, they listed about 8 college programs throughout the state that they deemed were not doing a good job at preparing future teachers to teach reading instruction. As a principal, did you ever have any issues with new teachers coming in struggling to correctly teach children the right way to learn, or did you just didn't know at the time?
That's a hard question to answer. We are in close proximity to Georgia Southern, and so it's been known as a teacher preparation institution, and they did an excellent job of preparing teachers, but we didn't get every teacher from Georgia Southern. So yes, and there were times when we helped them. Can I go back and make sure something? When I was talking about the kindergarten students and all, in no way, I don't think that the teachers have any blame in this. The best way I can explain it, and the speaker will ask me, why is teaching reading so different? What is it? Why do we need this? Well, I guess if I could use an analogy, there have been medicines that we've given children before in the past that doctors have that ended up not being the exact right way to treat a child. I think in today's world, our children are different, and also because of the science of reading knowledge, we know new ways to teach reading. No teacher I ever knew in the past set out to harm a child or do any harm to them. So for me, we've got to move forward from here. But I've worked in a school system that had many reading recovery teachers, for example. They were teaching their hearts out and doing what they knew at that time to be the best way to teach children. what we have now, and I want everybody to focus on what we need to do now. The methods and the way we teach children, because of the science of reading, are different. And I have to keep emphasizing, I think children are different because of their experience, the screen time and all that they're having now. So we have to teach them. We know more now. Our Professional Standards Commission is doing a fabulous job, along with the University System of Georgia, in making sure, I think there's 26 teacher preparation institutions in Georgia, and they are making major sweeping changes to the way they prepare teachers to teach. The speaker said it a minute ago, you're going to see big difference.
I mean, that's part of this legislation too, right, is to make sure that colleges and universities are teaching the right way and held accountable.
There's going to be a large investment, and there's going to be accountability.
Let's talk about that investment. It seems like you're trying to get a lot done. It seems like it's expensive. How are you going to pay for this?
We're going to put it in the QBE formula so that it's just ongoing, so that local systems can have the resources, teachers can have the resources with literacy coaches, and certainly with all hands on deck, if you will, when it comes to parents, grandparents, educators from every level, from, as I mentioned earlier, from those, the chancellor is all on board with this, and certainly ensuring that we have that science, that we're teaching what's the latest, not just the latest and greatest, what's proven to be a proven method to teach young people to read.
Ms. Dayle, you mentioned reading recovery, and I think you mentioned that because the state sort of banned it in its state code last year, and they've had a history of some issues. A report from the University of Delaware showed that it could potentially be harmful to children. What are you most excited about in these in this bill, in this proposal, that you would have wanted as a principal when you were still in the classroom and still in school?
The bill is going to allow for every K-3 school in the state to have a literacy coach dedicated to that school. And then we have a hierarchy of RESA literacy coaches at 2 different levels that will be going in and supporting those literacy coaches from the top
And what
down.
are those folks? The RESA people? Are those the trainers, or?
They're regional literacy
Okay, got it.
coaches, and they're regional leadership literacy coaches. And if I could explain those two, the leadership ones are going to work with principals and superintendents, because we know it has to come from the top down at every school for it to happen. So that means the principal has to be involved in this and understand it. And then there's regional literacy coaches that are RESA experts in literacy that are going to help do professional learning at all these approximately 1,300 school-based literacy coaches. We've never had before like a unified plan for the professional learning. What we've had in Georgia was kind of piecemeal. We had literacy coaches doing different models, doing a great job, but we want it to be more standardized. Yes, because that's going to help, and that's going to ensure that everything's research-based. It's not just some program that feels good.
Right. Some of the organizations that have applauded the legislation are the folks decoding dyslexia. They're super excited about it, but they did have a few concerns, and one of them is they were hoping that the legislation would include, when a literacy coach is fully trained, that they have that dyslexia certification, that they've been trained to identify and teach children with dyslexia a certain way. Do you think that is important to include in this legislation or to address in some way?
There is a dyslexia endorsement that many, if not all, of our literacy coaches have, and they're certainly encouraged to do that. The Professional Standards Commission is now working on a literacy coach endorsement certification. It's not ready yet, but it will be. And yes, the dyslexia is monumentally important in this issue.
In the legislation, and certainly we also recognize now there's a recognition about the impacts of dyslexia and how if we address it early, then it's I won't say it's easily addressed, but it's much more completely addressed if you start addressing those issues early. And certainly the House has made commitments in the past and with funding that we've supported organizations who are very strong in working in that area. So that'll be a part of it, and because we do understand that problem and that concern, and that we also can make an impact there to change people's lives.
One of the other big pieces of this legislation is that it would require kindergarten before first grade. Talk to me about why you thought it was so important to include that in this legislation.
Well, we know that, and Dayle has alluded to it, all children are not ready for the first grade by the time they enter the first grade. So we wanted to make sure that young people, that these children either go to kindergarten or they're prepared they could be homeschooled. But there will be some testing and there will be conversation with the parents to ensure they're ready for that first grade so they begin that journey of learning, and then the teachers certainly will have a uniformity a little bit in that first grade classroom. But there will be an effort to ensure that, hey, they're ready, they're prepared. We're going to start that from birth, but if we also going to ensure that they're ready by the time they leave kindergarten, because kindergarten is very, very critical.
I could add to that, in many states, what they did, they retained children in third grade.
Mississippi does that.
Yes, that were not ready. In Georgia, we realize that needs to happen earlier, and although the bill isn't about retention, it's about readiness and helping children to be really ready for first grade is monumentally important. And so we're shifting the focus from third grade. We think third grade is
too late.
Too late.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
You understand it.
A lot of people are going to go, this is huge, this is big. They also want to know, how long will it be until we see results? In your mind, as a former educator, as the lawmaker that wants to push this through, when can Georgians start seeing those reading scores improve?
I hope I'm wrong, but I think there could even be a little dip, because until everybody gets on board, parents, grandparents, child care workers, teachers, until we all get on the same page, you may not see the gains. It may not be an immediate thing, and I want people to be prepared for that, but I sincerely hope I'm wrong about it. I hope immediately we can start making a difference. We want to make a difference from the time a child is born, actually pre-birth, and from then on till they come to school.
I think I saw in somewhere that there's going to be funding to give every child, every newborn, a book.
Yes.
From the literally from the get-go.
Yes.
And Andy, this is not just about schools and not just about educators. This is about parents, grandparents, healthcare organizations, all of the folks that care about our young people and our children and about our future. This is going to be all hands on deck. And we also know we don't, when it's going to be about higher ed again, we don't have enough young people to come out to have a literacy coach to fill every slot. So it's going to take a year or two to get all those literacy coaches in place. But I'm an optimist, and I think you'll see the results we start seeing from our efforts here. And again, our investment. And this is a bipartisan issue. This is not, this is about our future, about our young people. I think we can make a difference, and I think it'll be very much sooner than later because it's time.
Mrs. Dayle, I know that you've been an educator for a long time. Was there anyone else in your ear saying, hey, talk to this, your husband about this, or hey, what about this? Anyone in the education field that was also giving you some information about what can potentially be in this bill?
How did you know to ask that question? there have been a lot of people that have, shared their feelings and their opinions with me, yes. Not any one person that would stick out, but yes, I'm a really good listener. So I've listened and I've sought out a lot of different people that know far more than I do about it. So yes, there have been others.
There are a lot of very passionate people in this area, and I'll point out one that's been helpful, and that's the chancellor, Sonny Perdue, and we've had his ear, and certainly the chair, Chris Irwin, of our education committee, and certainly Matt Dubnik. Both of those gentlemen have been huge champions. Pro Tem Jan Jones has been a champion for education. She's been a stalwart here, and she's a lot of people are just, this is their passion. I can name any. I'm leaving a lot of folks out in the House, but I think you'll see tomorrow how important this is when we put the vote on the board to all Georgians.
I'd love to know even a little bit more about, like, how long have you guys been married? How did you meet? I know that it's a very personal question, but I think people are genuinely invested in how you potentially influenced your husband in shaping this legislation. I'd love to learn a little bit more, if that's okay.
It was hard work. We met in college, and our first date, he took me to see Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, the real Frankie Valli in Savannah. I won't tell the rest of the story.
Please
but he
do.
almost didn't get a second date. And we are going to celebrate our 50th anniversary in June. So we're planning a trip with our family, with the grandchildren and our children. We don't want a party. We don't want any gold plates or anything like that. So we're going to go on a trip.
We've been very blessed and to be to have our lives together, and certainly for me, seeing the passion that Dale's had over the years for not just for education, not just in school, but being a champion and working for people, and knowing how much of a difference she's been able to make in a school that there were many folks who needed a helping hand up, and she was able to do that, whether it was getting those grants, providing a bookmobile, if you will, to go out into the community and just those things. But then to see other people certainly circle around and just conversation, people care. And she's made a difference, but a lot of people have made a difference. And we're going to make a difference. It's going to be soon.
The truth is, this is the one thing I know. He knows all this. He can talk about roads and pipelines and pine trees. This is just my thing, okay? So I can talk about it. Can we talk about vision and hearing?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big component. I just published a story last week about it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Tell us about it.
So there's new research showing myopia is increasing in young children, and there's a potential link to the amount of screen time that a child is spending because they're not getting enough time outdoors. There's this thing called the 20-20-20 rule. You got to look at something far away 20 feet for 20 seconds, and I forgot the other 20 second, but there's another 20 in there, and it's an increasing problem. Part of the story also showed that Georgia, unfortunately, is one of the worst states when it comes to access to vision screenings. So we profiled an organization called the Lions Lighthouse Foundation that goes inside schools, and yeah, I'd love for you to see it. We've done a whole series of stories called Reading Reset over the past year and some change, all about the origins of why Georgia's reading scores are the way they are, to flawed teaching methods, reading recovery's potential part in that, to the science of reading, and sort of it doesn't focus on just the problem. We traveled to Mississippi and interviewed the folks in Mississippi talking about how they were able to get their scores up. Speaking of Mississippi, I hate to put Mississippi on the spot, but it must feel weird to know that Mississippi is higher than Georgia when it comes to reading scores.
Well, Speaker Gunn was the House Speaker in Mississippi when they instituted their efforts. Now, I'm very proud of them. And I'm very proud they've made those changes because it's about Americans. It's about our young people. In Alabama, they've done an outstanding job too with Speaker Ledbetter leading the way in Alabama. But those gentlemen and Speaker Smith there in Mississippi, they're taking it to another level. And it's time for us for our Georgia model. And that's what we have with Dayle's insistence and the leadership of Chairman Irwin and some other that I mentioned earlier, some really good folks in the House that care about this. But we also realized too that vision was an issue. It's an issue for us in our state. We're going to make a difference too. We'll start with that as we kick off this new optometry school. There will be training physicians, and certainly then they'll be hopefully be in rural Georgia and stay in rural Georgia, but they'll be available. And like working with the Lions, there are a lot of folks here, and thanks for you bringing that to light, because those are the type positives that we can get into the families so they can take care of these issues, because we know that's an issue too. The quality of sight certainly sometimes discourages us. Of course, we have that other legislation that we don't allow cell phones in K through 8, and we think that'll move on into 9 through 12. And so those are positives when it comes to our young people not overusing screen time and having the ability to speak to each other, develop their speaking habits, and certainly encourage each other. It's a all hands on deck again deal. Yeah.
You know, in other states, they have mandated screenings that occur at different grade levels. In Georgia, as far as I can tell, we only have when they enter school, so it's either pre-K or kindergarten. We're very excited because Representative Lisa Hagan has introduced some legislation just this recently so that our children will be screened for vision and hearing K through 3rd grade, every one of those grades. Now we know we want to do more, but this is a great start, and she's been working with the Department of Public Health to put this together. So you're gonna see a big change there in the screening. And the letter, if a child is not passing or is deficit on either the vision or the hearing or both, the parent's going to get a letter home in the mail. We're not going to rely on it being put in a book bag and maybe the parent doesn't see it. The issue becomes this, you know, they have to start somewhere. And so the House is starting with this. Yeah. The issue is the children that are deficit in either the speech, or the vision or the hearing. And so what we're going to need is for communities to get involved with clubs like the Lions Club or the Lions Lighthouse group, and there are others that I'm not sure about, in following up on that screening, because oftentimes parents don't follow up on the letter, and then the child could go years without seeing
And
them.
it's not their fault. Sometimes they have busy lives, or maybe, and it's also very difficult to see whether your child can see or not. They're usually focused on other things that are external where you can see very easily. I can tell I'm running out of time because I see seeing her.
This is where we're going to need your help, Atlanta News First, as we continue to tell this story, know where these resources are. Again, I'll say it's all hands on deck. It's not just us. It's not just the General Assembly. It's not just government. This is going to be churches, community groups, news media. As we get this message out, we need your help because this is about our future.
House Speaker Burns, Mrs. Burns, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate you.